Hey everyone, it's Mr. Keys, and today we're going to learn a couple of techniques in how to find notes in a song. To avoid any copyright issues, I've put together a couple of tracks really quickly in GarageBand just for this purpose. Now, my production skills, well, they're okay, but go easy on me. Just to note, each person's abilities will vary when it comes to using their ear in music. If you can't hear the notes that I'm proposing, don't be discouraged. If this is you, you might want to take a look at some ear training videos here on YouTube first. I've posted some links below. Lastly, I'm assuming that you have some sort of ability to hear notes and identify them through singing. This doesn't mean that you got to sing like Beyonce, but you definitely need to be able to carry a tune. So get in front of a piano or guitar or whatever instrument you use, and let's listen to the first track. Okay, so that's the first track. Now we're going to listen to it again, and this time I want you to focus and try to remember whatever notes you hear first. Okay, so since this is an instrumental track, the easiest thing to hear is the highest sounding instrument. So here's what I hear. So now that I've heard these notes, I need to use the piano to try and find these notes. Again, don't be discouraged if it takes you longer to find the notes. Rewind and re-listen over and over until you have a list of as many notes as possible. Okay, so I found an A flat, I found a G, I found a C, and a C sharp. Now, one of the things that's really important is that you make sure that you actually heard these notes. Sometimes when listening to a song over and over again, by the time you figure out what the note is on your instrument, somehow the note has actually changed in your mind, and instead of writing down a C, for example, you might think that you actually heard a D. So listen over and over again. I can't stress this enough. If you get the notes wrong, then the key will probably be wrong, and the chords that you find will be wrong as well. Okay, so I broke my own rule already. From the previous video in this series, remember that I had mentioned that we need to write down all of the enharmonic equivalent note names as well. Here's a list of all notes and their enharmonic equivalent versions. Let's convert our list of notes so that it includes all of the enharmonic equivalent notes as well. All right, so now we have G sharp or A flat, G, B sharp or C, and C sharp or D flat. The next step is to create the order of sharps and flats, then place check marks or X's over each sharp and flat. Let's place a check mark over G sharp, but since we have a G, we also need to place an X over it. Uh-oh. We already have a contradiction, so we can see that it's not going to be a sharp key. Let's move to the flats. Place a check mark over A flat, an X over G flat since we have a G, an X over C flat since we have a C, and a check mark over D flat. So we can see that we're not sure if there's an E or E flat, or whether or not there's a B or B flat, but we can make some assumptions. Since the last flat we have is D flat, we can assume that we do not have an F flat, and that since we have everything up until D flat, we also have B flat and E flat. Looks like we found our key. 2 videos back, we learned how to identify flat keys from key signatures. We take the second last flat, which is A flat, and that's the key that we're in. So we are in the key of A flat major. You have to remember that this is a process and it does take time to develop your skills in this area. Let's try another example. This time, we'll try a more real-world example. Usually, we're listening to songs that have singers, and the melody that the singer sings is always the easiest thing to hear, even if your ear is not that great. The key is to listen, try to identify a note or two, rewind, listen again, etc. This is the process that I took to learn how to play by ear, although it took me years to figure this out. We're going to listen to a detuned version of a song that you may or may not know. where I've remixed it with my own beat. Let's take a listen through once.
You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much.
Okay, let's try to identify the first few notes being sung.
You shout it out, but I...
Okay, so this is what I hear. Mm-mm-mm-mm. So let's try to find these on the piano. Okay, so we have a G sharp or A flat. We have A sharp or B flat. Our third note is C sharp or D flat. And our last note is B sharp or C. Okay, so the next step is let's make two lists of sharps and flats. We have to check off G sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and B sharp. And on the flat list, check off A flat, B flat, D flat, and place an X over C flat because we have a C. On the sharp side, we potentially have all 7 sharps, which would indicate C sharp major, since we have no other information suggesting that there is a contradiction. On the flat side, we have a maximum of 5 flats and a minimum of 4 flats. 4 flats indicates A flat major, and 5 flats indicates D flat major. Something to note is the enharmonic equivalent of C sharp major, which we found in our sharp key investigation, is D flat major. There are 3 ways that we can narrow this down to one possible key. So here's the first method. Let's play the song again, and at the same time, I'm going to play each scale with the song to see which one sounds the best. One scale will always match better. Since C sharp and D flat major are essentially the same notes, we only need to use one of them. The scales we'll try with the song will be A flat major and D flat major. Let's try A flat major first. You can play the scale ascending, which is upwards, or descending, downwards, or even just cycling through notes from the scale in whatever way you want. So here we go.
You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much.
Okay, so that's A flat major. Let's try D flat major.
You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much.
You may want to try each scale many more times just to be sure you've come to the right conclusion. The thing that we're looking for is which scale fits the best in that situation. One scale will sound better than the other. The second way that we can narrow down the key even more is by trying to hear more notes from the song. We can use our logic and be a little bit smarter about this process. When we find more than one key option, there are always keys that differ by 1 flat or sharp. What's the difference between A flat major and D flat major? A flat major has a G natural and no G flat, and D flat major has a G flat and no G natural. If we can hear a G or G flat in the song, then we know what our key is. Let's listen to a couple more notes by listening to the singer's melody.
You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much.
Okay, so when I listened again, I heard an E flat and an F, which wasn't in our list before. But those notes don't help us narrow down the key because E flat and F are in A flat major and D flat major. It's only the presence of a G or G flat that will help us distinguish between A flat major and D flat major. Sometimes you may never hear the note that you need to distinguish between the two keys in the singer's melody. Let's go to technique number 3. The final technique that can be used is to play the song or a section of the song and hammer out the notes in question. In this case, it's G and G flat. One of them will eventually match with the song, and one will never match. This requires careful listening. Let's begin with G.
You shout it out.
Sounds pretty horrible so far.
Can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud,
That's bad.
not saying much.
All right, so that was pretty bad. It didn't seem like the G fit anywhere. Let's try G flat now.
You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much.
Okay, so we found that the G did not fit, but the G flat fits sometimes. Going through only once may not lead you to make a confident decision, so you may need to do this a couple of times. After listening carefully, it seems to me that the G flat fits much better. Therefore, we're in the key of D flat major. Since C sharp major is the same as D flat major, we can also call the key C sharp major. Personally, I prefer naming it D flat major over C sharp major because D flat major has 5 flats and C sharp major has 7 sharps. Figuring out notes in a song and then trying to figure out the key does take some practice. Keep at it and you'll improve over time.